Today's reading is from the book of Job. It's a story of how we make sense of tragedy. In the story, Job is a good, successful person who follows all of the rules. Also in the story, God and the devil are in conversation, and God brags about how righteous Job is. The devil says that is so because of all of the blessings God has given Job. God then invites the devil to test Job to prove his case, and so he does. Job's estate is either seized or destroyed, and his children die in a house collapse. Yet as he grieves, Job praises God. The devil then afflicts Job's health with an untreatable and painful skin condition, but Job still does not slander God. Job's three friends, Eliphaz, Bildad, and Zophar, come to spend time with their friend and try and help him. They sit silently with him at first. And when Job complains bitterly, they try reminding him of God's sovereignty over all things. But this doesn't help to comfort Job. The passage today is part of Job's response to his friends. Then Job replied, Listen carefully to my words. Let this be the consolation you give me. Bear with me while I speak, and after I have spoken, mock on. Is my complaint directed to man? Why should I not be impatient? Look at me and be astonished. Clap your hand over your mouth. When I think about this, I'm terrified. Trembling seizes my body. Why do the wicked live on, growing old and increasing in power? They see their children established around them, their offspring before their eyes. Their homes are safe and free from fear. The rod of God is not upon them. Their bulls never fail to breed. Their cows calve and do not miscarry. They send forth their children as a flock. Their little ones dance about. They sing to the music of tambourine and harp. They make merry to the sound of the flute. They spend their years in prosperity and go down to the grave in peace. Yet they say to God, Leave us alone. We have no desire to know your ways. Who is the Almighty that we should serve him? What would we gain by praying to him? But their prosperity is not in their own hands, so I stand aloof from the counsel of the wicked. Can anyone teach knowledge to God, since he judges even the highest? One man dies in full vigor, completely secure and at ease, his body well nourished, his bones rich with marrow. Another person dies in bitterness of soul, never having enjoyed anything good. Side by side, they lie in dust, and worms cover them both. I know full well what you're thinking, the schemes by which you would wrong me. You say, Where now is that great man's house, the tents where the wicked men lived? Have you never questioned those who travel? Have you paid no regard to their accounts? That the evil man is spared from the day of calamity, that he is delivered from the day of wrath? Who denounces his conduct to his face? Who repays him for what he has done? He is carried to the grave, and watch is kept over his tomb. The soil in the valley is sweet to him. All men follow after him, and a countless throng goes before him. So how can you console me with your nonsense? Nothing is left of your answers but falsehood. The word of the Lord.
I was working on finding a passage from Job that would kind of encapsulate the whole story, but that guy is wordy. He talks and talks and talks, and every sentence is pages long. And trying to get something that kind of had the story in a nutshell without having Jonathan read for the entire hour was really challenging. So I decided to pick for us a piece of Job's response because I think it does kind of capture where he's at with things, which could be summarized in the simple phrase, it's not fair. And he's right. It's not fair. He was doing everything right according to all of the rules. He was acting according to what he had been taught. In fact, he was going a little bit above and beyond. He was sharing with his neighbors. He was offering banquets and inviting people to them. And after the banquet, he would go and make a sacrifice in the temple just in case his kids had done anything untoward at the party. Just in case. We'll just go and make sure. He was really dotting all of his I's and crossing all of his T's, which is why it was so confusing to him when things started going wrong, because when things are going right, it can feel like that is because of our own efforts, right? When things are going well, it's really easy for us to tell ourselves, it's working, I'm doing it. Everything is happening according to plan. Things are going the way I wanted them to because of my own efforts. It feels good. It feels predictable. It feels easy. Maybe you're working hard, but at least things, it feels like I know how things will be because I am in charge of them. And then things change. Things change for Job. Calamity upon calamity. His servants are abducted. His children are smashed in a house collapse, all 7 of them, all at once, all gone, leaving only one servant alive to come and tell him what has happened. His crops fail, his animals die, everything is wrecked. And he knows what he is supposed to do then. And what he is supposed to do is say, thank you, God, for whatever you give me. God is great. I'm sure this will be temporary. And he does that. I don't know how sincere it is, but he does it. In fact, I don't know how sincere it was before either. We don't really know that. We only know what he did. We don't know how he felt about it. And then things get even worse. His health is gone. He develops painful sores all over his body. He's unable to do the things that he used to do. Some of us in the room know what it's like to lose some of our physical capabilities. We used to be able to do some things and then we can't. And there is sometimes for some of us a sense that things are not exactly fair. I did what they told me to do. I followed the rules and it didn't work. Here I am in pain all the time and painful to look at, hard for other people to be around. What do I do at this point? I think what happens in that moment is Job comes, perhaps for the first time in his life, to a sincere spiritual expression. A real heartfelt cry from his gut. And his first real, sincere spiritual expression is, this is not fair. This is not fair. I didn't deserve this. And he's right. He didn't deserve it. None of us get exactly what we deserve. None of us get exactly the things laid out according to what we have done to earn them, as much as we might want it to work that way, as comforting as it might be. So there is Job, completely laid low, stripped of all good things in his life. And because this is a story where it's a community trying to make sense of tragedy, in the story, the reason for all these things is God wondering how much Job really means all of his prayers. I do not read the story and attribute those actions to God's agency. I do not read this story and think God was like, yes, that's a good idea. Why don't we have the devil afflict Job with everything that he can think of and see what happens? I read the story and say, this is what it's like. Things happen and we want there to be a reason so badly. We want it to make sense so badly. We want it to be someone's fault. We want it to be the devil's fault. That feels good. That's really easy. There's a bad guy, and it's his fault that this is all happening to me. That part to me, I don't know. There's stuff going on that we don't have necessarily all the information about. To me, the important thing is Job and Job's friends. Because in this story, laid completely low and just wrecked, health gone, kids gone, wealth gone, everything that he could give back in a way, all the ways that he could probably reciprocate to his friends, gone. And his 3 friends, who live at a distance, they're not close to him, nor are they close to each other, hear about what has happened to Job and say, you know what? We need to go there. We need to go to the middle of that calamity because our friend is suffering. We need to go there and be with him. That's hard decision number 1, and the first thing that I want to commend the friends for. Because knowing that somebody is really laid low and really suffering and probably not going to be super pleasant to spend time with, deciding to go into that is good friend decision number 1. And in the story, what we hear is what happens when they first get there is they just don't say anything. And I want to commend them for that as good friend decision number 2. Because at a certain point, as they discover when they try to speak, there is nothing you can say into that level of tragedy. Some of us in the room have never really experienced that sense that everything is lost, and some of us have. I have not. But what I've heard from people who have is there's really not any words that meet that place. There's really nothing that can touch that moment. But presence can, at least a little bit. And those friends show up, and they must have been tempted because it is so hard to sit and be present to somebody's pain like that and not try to fill up the silence with a bunch of words and not try to answer back all of the things that the person might be saying and not try to fix it. Not try to make things better. It is so hard, and they did it for a while. And I think that they must have felt like it wasn't working. I think they must have felt like it wasn't helping, and it does feel like that. And they slipped a little bit. They slipped off track, and they started trying to answer back. And they started saying to Job, well, maybe this isn't all about you. Maybe there's bigger things going on here. Maybe this isn't, due to your action or inaction. Maybe you didn't do the wrong thing. Maybe God is just too big to be concerned with individual things in your life. Maybe things just happen sometimes. God is all the way up here, and maybe you just can't draw a direct line like that. And this wasn't terribly satisfying to Job, as you can probably imagine. Job is thinking, but my suffering is enormous. How can anything be so big as to not be concerned with this level of suffering, which is a lot? And they're both right. The friends are right, and Job is right in that situation. I think the friends are right to say, we actually can't draw a direct line and say every moment of suffering that happens in our life is because of some bad guy or something we did or some direct action, something we should have done or not done that would have changed things, or some plan that God has for things to be one way or another. Systems are happening way beyond our scale. And that our suffering matters to God. That God is not so big as to not notice our experiences. That our suffering is big enough to matter in any scale that matters to God. They're both right, and they're kind of talking past each other. Part of that is because something that helps for one person might be a different thing than helps for the other person. The thing I want to commend the friends for in that situation, good friend thing number 3, is that Job did not like what they were saying, and they did not run away. Job got upset, and they did not leave. Job said back to them, "Are you not listening? Did you not hear everything I said here? You are wrong about everything, and that's unhelpful, and you're doing a terrible job. Stop your grumbling," he says to them. "Just be quiet. Don't even try." He's really suffering. He's not his best self in this interaction. We've all had friends like that. We've all been friends like that. Somebody comes to help you and you bite their head off because you are not ready to receive the kind of help that they are trying to offer. And I really want to commend those friends. The third thing they did right there was they just stayed and took it. They tried again. They tried a different tactic. They tried saying, well, maybe there is a purpose to this. Maybe there was something you didn't know about. Maybe it's possible. I know you thought you were doing everything right, but there could have been. Maybe there was a purpose to this. And Job says, that's not helpful either. You're doing it wrong again. I know a lot, and you don't know anything about this situation, which is absolutely what it feels like when you are in that deep suffering. You want to tell people you don't know anything. You do not understand. It is impossible for you to understand what this suffering is like. And they're both right. And they're talking past each other. And they stay again. And they listen. They listen to what Job is saying, even though, like I said, he is talking for pages and pages. He's going on and on and on and on, and he's saying things that are true. He's saying, in the passage we heard, don't you know? How is it possible? How can it be with a good God that good things happen to bad people? How can it be that we see people who are just bad, evil people, whose crops come up perfectly, whose children thrive and go off and get jobs and buy houses in the Bay Area? How is it possible that people that are not even good people are receiving all these blessings and they live long, healthy lives? How is it possible that my neighbor who smoked a pack a day his entire life never got lung cancer? Lived until 95, still smoking. How fair is that? How fair is that when my cousin, who is only 22 and was exposed to secondhand smoke, not even their own fault, now has lung cancer? How is that fair? How is it fair that we see people working very, very, very hard for almost nothing, and people doing almost no work and just raking it in? How can that be fair? He's not wrong. He's not wrong. And we honestly would get stuck in this and not be able to do anything else if we let ourselves think about it too much. We get stuck there. You look at the world and you think, this is not fair. And it's so far off of fair that I don't even know that we can fix it. Good things happen to people who do not deserve them, and bad things happen to people who deserve only good. We see this. We know this. Job is not wrong about this. And he's stuck. And his friends just stay. They don't give up on him. And they don't say, this is getting really unpleasant. And they don't even let themselves off the hook by saying, you know what, it seems like this isn't a good day. Maybe we'll come back next week and see if it's a better time. for us to visit. It seems like, he might want some time and space. When in the situation, he doesn't know what he wants. But I bet he doesn't want his friends to decide that being with him is too hard. They stay. They stay in it, they listen, they take his pages and pages and pages of verbal abuse, his arguments back to everything, and they just stay. This story, because it is a story of people trying to make sense out of unsensible tragedy and calamity, ends with a sort of magical thinking happy ending, which is very calming to us. It's hard to sit in that like, oh, things are really unfair and messy. The book of Job ends with God showing up and saying, he really did kind of stay in it, and I proved my point, and therefore I will bless him. All his other friends show up and give him expensive gifts, and he has a bunch more children and lives to 180 or something. His crops come back and his animals come back and he gets new servants, I guess. And the book doesn't really talk about the fact that his new children are not the same children that he lost. That he still went through that tragic experience. In fact, the book is trying to pretend like we can erase what has happened to us. But I will do a little bit of on-the-fly midrash. I'm writing my own story. I'm writing my own imagination into this story because it's not in the book. And I am imagining that none of those other friends were Job's friends like those three. That even once things get better, and even once everybody else is on board, and even once things come back, those other friends come and go. But the ones that Job sees all the time, the ones that Job stays connected to, are the ones that stayed when things were bad. Those are the friends that Job knows love him for him, and not for his success, and not for his correctness, and not for his wealth, and not for his big story, and not for his piety. They are the ones that heard him at his lowest. They are the ones who stayed. What I hope for us out of this story is that we will be friends who stay. For each other, for our organizations, for our churches, for our communities, that when things are hard, we will find the courage to stay, to be quiet, to try that out, to speak, to try to offer comfort and fail, and try again, and fail a second time, and try a third time, and maybe go back to quiet after that. But to stay, to see someone suffering and say, there is my neighbor. There I will show up. There I will be present. There I will offer my friendship. May we follow those slightly error-prone and yet faithful examples. Amen.